Welcome to episode 38 of Rail Talk. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds, and I want to start this show giving a major shout out to friend of the show and Rail Talk special correspondent Skip Anderson, who got his master's degree last Friday. We tuned into the presentation. His thesis was about the effect of media on horse sales, which is obviously something that we've seen grow over the past decade or so. And the comparison of horses who sold with media and without media, it was fascinating. It was well presented. Skip, we're so proud of you, buddy.
Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable. This is the 2018 version of me. I've gone back in time, and unfortunately, I'm making the same mistakes I did previously by going back onto a podcast. But Joe, it's good to see you. And I have a special personal shout out as well. My college roommate and best man at my wedding, Michael Spike Sirac, is 54 years old today. Happy birthday, Spike. I love you, buddy.
And John is now 14 years old today without the beard. So,
yeah, there was a wardrobe malfunction. I got a little too close to the razor, and I just had to at that point clean the canvas, as they say. The thing is, Joe, I went into it thinking like somebody had told me, hey, if you shave, it makes everything look bigger. And I was like, I'm all over that. But yeah, my nose definitely looks bigger now. So I went the wrong part of the anatomy, apparently.
Rail Talk is sponsored by Tailor Made. The deadlines are coming. 23 days, a little over 23 days as we record this from the May 1st deadline for the summer yearling sales. And if you want to be taken care of at the yearling sales, Tailor Made is the place to go. They have a great deep bench, deep staff who's been doing this for years, for decades, will take care of your horses and the clients as if they're family. That's the way they've done it. That's the way they've built their reputation. They are leading consigners pretty much every single yearling sale. They've consigned dozens of grade one winners. They do everything the right way. We can attest to this. We know the Tailors, especially John, and the way that they run their business with integrity and honor and thoroughness in terms of getting your horses to the sale and getting them to achieve the highest price possible. So go to TailorMadeFarm.com, enter with TailorMade before those yearling sale deadlines pass. They'll take care of you, like I said, like family, and get you the best possible return on all those babies. All right, so we're pretty much all set on the Derby preps. We're going to have a good idea in the next week or two about what the field will look like for Kentucky Derby 150, plus or minus Hades, because we got Hades running in Lexington coming up, see if he can squeeze his way into the Derby. But we had several major preps over the weekend, the Santa Anita Derby, the Wood, and the Bluegrass. I'm going to start with the Bluegrass just because I think that the top two horses are going to be amongst the favorites in the Kentucky Derby. I think Sierra Leone will probably be second choice after Fierceness. I was against him on Saturday. I was all over Just a Touch. I had everything singled to him. I thought they both ran big. I thought the pace was pretty quick, and Just a Touch really did most of the dirty work up front, tracking in second the whole time. But Sierra Leone, it's not easy to close the way he does from the 10 post in a shorter stretch that Keeneland has. So he's done a lot in a short amount of time to rocket up the leaderboard. I'm generally going to play against those horses in the Derby just because I think they need too much help and too much traffic navigation to win a race like that at a short price. But he was very impressive. The top two were both really impressive. I think Dornoch kind of got exposed a little bit, that he's just not at that elite level in terms of the 3-year-olds, at least at this moment. It's a long season. But, John, I thought the first two on Cross the Wire in the Bluegrass were better than pretty much any Derby prep I've seen thus far, except for Fierceness and the Florida Derby.
I think of the weekend, it was certainly the most impressive win and the most impressive race. Sierra Leone, again, we kind of keep pointing to the fact that he was a $2.3 million Fasig-Tipton graduate, and that it's tough to live up to it. I think it's safe to say if he hadn't lived up to it in the Risen Star, he's definitely lived up to it after the Bluegrass. Joe, I was surprised that not only did he go against the trend and made up a ton of ground, which was impressive, But it looked like he could have kept going. It looked like he could have gone another lap around that track and not lost a step. So going from the 1.8 to 1.25 miles, for a lot of horses, it's a big problem. It won't be a problem. The horse has shown that he can run on a fast racetrack, on a sloppy racetrack, on a muddy racetrack. He can, keep himself to within a couple of lengths, but he really prefers to be 10, 12 lengths out of it and make a serious run. I'm impressed that you were wheeling just a touch in that race, because it was a pretty deep field. You had BU that broke his maiden, Rapoli horse broke his maiden with a 96 buyer. Top Connor on the rail, who also was very impressive, winning first time out at Gulfstream. He was in the post 1 of 11 at Gulfstream and won easily. And really, I think the post hurt him this time because he had to go. He had to be forced out there and go. And you'll be hearing from Top Connor, I think, in the, maybe in the mile, or maybe in some of the undercard races. But as he gets older, I think he's going to be another interesting horse. He was $1 million 2-year-old purchase. Sees the Gray that had 27 points going into the race, and had run, I don't know, what did he run, like 27 times as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old already, Joe, for
Yep.
For the coach. And then, we haven't even mentioned Dornoch, who, look, on the one hand, if he wasn't the full brother to the Derby winner Mage, people wouldn't be talking as much about him. I think that in my heart of hearts, I'm not necessarily sure that they had him fully cranked for the Bluegrass, as silly as it sounds, because it's a grade 1 and it's in Danny Gargan's backyard. And I'm sure he wanted to win that one, but he had enough points to get in. And I'm sure it was just a matter of, all right, we're going to run the race and see how he does. Is he as good as Sierra Leone or just a touch? I don't think so. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that I expect a bounce back from him, I should say, going into the Kentucky Derby. And Joe, the other one I wanted to mention was Good Money, because I know you're really savvy about this stuff. But the second that he started jumping around in the gate and almost broke through, like they had to really calm him down. Once he got into the gate, that doomed him. He didn't have a chance at that point. And he kind of ran like it. He kind of, he ran up the racetrack after putting in a good, 6 or 7 furlong race at that point. Again, I think that's a horse that you want to keep an eye on down the road. He, on the other hand, where we talked about all these expensive yearling and 2-year-old purchases, for a good magic out of that female family for $100,000 yearling, he probably, I'm guessing, has a confirmation flaw or two, or maybe had an issue with his vetting to only bring $100,000 as a yearling. But I think you're going to be hearing from him down the road as well, if they can calm his mind down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that was only his 3rd career start, so he still got upside. I don't know. I heard the same thing about Dornoch in the Fountain of Youth. I wasn't cranked for that race, and that's why he only beat that 99-1 shot by a length and 3/4 or whatever it was. I just think he's not as good as the other top 3-year-olds in the country. Maybe I'll be proven wrong on Derby Day, but like, this is 2 races in a row that I've heard he wasn't fully cranked. I'm going to move on just briefly to the Wood Memorial, because I was there on Saturday at Aqueduct. It was great crowd, honestly. I haven't seen that many people at Aqueduct probably since the Pope was there in the 90s. But it was there? Yes. In like the early 90s, he led a mass. It was like 75,000 people there.
Wow.
And I know. And it's usually you're the Pope of New York racing.
I was just going to say, like, they must have lost my my invitation in the mail. But okay, sorry, go on.
The place would burst into flames if you and the Pope were there.
No question.
At the same time, I think.
No question.
But anywho, the Wood Memorial was won by Resilience, who is a kind of a slow developing Bill Mott type, who I think will probably be heard from in the Triple Crown going forward. But honestly, man, like that race, I'm so thankful that this horse was okay. But I'm sure you all saw a deposition who was 157-1 in that race go down in the stretch, and I assumed the worst. I was like, that was it for me for the day. Like I had to ship out after that. And I just think there's still trauma after the events of last summer at Saratoga, at least in my mind, watching races. Like, I'm kind of expecting the worst sometimes, and it certainly looked like the worst would be true in that case. Great reporting by Dave Grenning, Steve Bick, and the guys who were following up to make sure that horse was okay. He was able to walk off on his own power and seems fine. Like, even forgetting like all the leg stuff that could happen. He could have broken his neck. Like, it could have gone wrong in so many different ways. He was okay. Other than that, there wasn't much to say about the race. Like, once Deterministic didn't show up, it kind of really fell apart into like a one other than allowance, I would say, as evidenced by a 106-1, a 38-1, and an 80-1 shot following home Resilience. And the Santa Anita Derby, like, I think without Nysos, like, that's a very, very average crop of 3-year-olds out in California. I think that's been proven several times in these prep races. So there's not too much to say about that. The big story was about Frankie Dettori winning 6 in a row, which we can get to in a second. But John, any thoughts from the Wood or Santa Anita Derby?
The California horses, I think, are going to be a little bit of a disappointment. And man, if that is not a soundbite for when Stronghold wins the Kentucky Derby, I don't know what is. But of the 3 preps that ran on Saturday, it was the weakest. It was the slowest. He earned an 89 buyer to win, which is only 1 point less than the Wood. But a good 9-10 points behind the winner and second place horses of the Bluegrass. It's a little disappointing that there's not going to be something coming in from the West, but we anticipated that when they extended Bafford's ban for the 2024 Kentucky Derby. Bafford did finish second with Imagination, and they were well up the field, well up the track with the rest of the field in that race. Tapalo, again, had a bad break. I don't know how he would have really fared against the upper echelon group of the California crop. Tinky, our friend Tinky, commented with great information last show about should these Derby preps all be grade 1s. I think he said none of them should be grade 1s, which I don't necessarily agree with, but the grading system is something that needs to be rehauled. And that's for another show as well, Joe. I don't want the takeaway of the Wood to be just about deposition, because Resilience, earned 100 points and is now squarely going to be running in the Kentucky Derby, another Into Mischief horse, followed by another Good Magic. We keep hearing that name over and over again. He's almost like the new gun runner, as it were. Good Magic with another Danny Gargan Good Magic Society man that Danny owns a piece of. That'll be in the gate for the Kentucky Derby. Deterministic was a disappointment. I think you're right, though. I think he's kind of coming back down to earth and running against some more quality horses, and it's showing. But the thing about the Wood that I'll walk away with was the whole deposition issue. And Joe, I like when smaller trainers like Uriah St. Louis come in and they buy their own. Uriah in particular buys his own horses, usually at a modest price, shows up in these races, occasionally, hits the board. His philosophy in interviews in the past has been, I pay $10,000-$20,000 for a horse. If I run 5th in the Wood Memorial, that more than pays for the horse. And I understand where he's coming from on that. But I have a real issue with people who are running horses way out of their league. It's one thing if you want to run a horse and it's 20-1, 31, that the horse is peaking, the horse is coming into a good race. But Deposition in particular have proven time and time again that he just wasn't of this class. He finished 6th, 4th, 7th. The only time he hit the board was when he won in a maiden special weight race in November at Parks, and he was 800-1 for a reason. And it used to drive me nuts when Luch used to do this in all the big races. And look, it's their horses. They can do whatever they want with it. The thing that bothers me is when you get into these bigger fields and it's just one more horse that the legitimate contenders need to get through by around. And it'd be a very different conversation right now if Deposition had fallen differently on the racetrack instead of going straight down. If he had leaned left or right because he was in between horses when it all happened and had taken out a horse or two, or a couple of horses behind him had to seriously steer around or go over him because there was an issue. Now, I'm not saying that Uriah St. Louis was running a horse in a race that the horse physically wasn't able to handle. It wasn't like he knew that the horse was going to have an issue of that caliber. Of course, he wouldn't have run the horse. And of course, the stewards and the vets would have pulled the horse if they thought there was any inclination that there was an issue, because that seems to be the way things are going now, which is to err on the side of caution. So I'm not saying that it was predetermined that the horse wasn't 100%. I'm just saying that sometimes these horses shouldn't be in these races because other than the free lunch that you're getting, there's no way possible that that horse was going to hit the board and do anything. And I'm not the only one saying it. There were 20,000 people at Aqueduct that were betting literally against him and saying that as well.